weather. But it's to be expected at this time of year, so I'll take it graciously, as long as it's not too cold, and it isn't, so that's good.
Yeah, I quite like it when it rains this hard, because it's doing a proper job, isn't it? I don't like it when it's spitting, but when the heavens open, there's something feels cleansing somehow.
It does, and nourishing.
Yeah.
And the smell of the air changes.
Yeah.
You can smell the rain.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. I just love the changes. If it was the same, it would be boring.
It certainly would, yes. Although we have to become accustomed now, we don't have summers anymore, we have mini heat waves.
Yeah. Oh, well, we might still have some, although the way it looks like it's getting a bit Arctic, actually. I saw some weather forecasted today.
I don't mind the cold at all. I relish it.
Yeah, I do.
And I look forward to the snowfalls. But I want snow. I don't want a little bit of snow. I want snow.
Yeah, and I have a whole box of hats, like woolly hats, and a whole big bin bag full of jumpers and scarves and things that I put away in the summer, and then it's lovely to get them out again.
I'm my dry robe ready for the winter again. Although it's still too warm, I can't wear it. I get too hot in it. So I'm back to my tartan lumberjack jacket for now, which suffices. I don't mind getting a little bit wet in it. I don't mind that at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, rotational clothes. Does everybody do that? Are we unique in that kind of sphere, or is that a popular pastime?
I think we're probably not normal, but that's okay.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I don't want to be normal. As that saying goes, it's no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society.
Totally. That's such a good phrase, saying, quote, whatever it is. Who said that? Do you know who said that? Because I use that quite often and I never know who it was.
It's Krishnamurti.
Okay.
Something like that. I'll find it and post it up again.
Yeah, that would be good if I actually know who I'm quoting. So, are you a black sheep, Andy?
Very, very much so. But so was my father, to a certain extent. So I've sort of like the son of the black sheep of the family.
Yeah, that's kind of, in some ways it can be a good thing. It depends that, because sometimes people get scapegoated by the person that was scapegoated, but sometimes they don't. Like, if you can have a sympathizer, that's going to help.
Yes, I'm going to find it. I'll take a screenshot of that. I'm going to go into the website. Back to the group. There we go. Yeah, Jiddu Krishnamurti.
Right, okay. Yeah, I don't know much about them, but I've heard the name Krishnamurti.
Yes, that's the guy. I don't know where he got it from. I don't know if it's his original quote or whether he repeated it from somewhere else. But whenever you put it into Google, it's him that always comes up. Yeah.
I wouldn't mind knowing the backstory, actually, like how they came to that conclusion. Because it's a really good quote, and it just really moves you. You know what I mean? It's understandable. And kind of reassuring as well to understand the zoom out perspective.
And it's a simple, easily understood, succinct comment, and it's true. You know, if the society that you're living in is profoundly sick and you are well adjusted to it, which many are, then then that is no measure of health. That's detrimental to your health, and it's so true.
And I think a lot of people, a lot of people on this path have adjusted to it in their earlier life and then come out of it. You see what I mean? Mm.
So it's 1 minute past. Do you want me to start the recording? There's no panic. There's no one on after you this evening, so the evening is entirely yours.
Yeah.
To do with what you will.
Yeah. Okay.
So
go on.
Do you want me to start it up?
Yeah. Go on. You start it, Andy. Thanks.
Healing, and we'll just call it Black Sheep.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay. Right, I'll do that countdown as normal. Press start and then mute myself, and then it's over to you, Jenny.
Okay, thank you.
3, 2, 1.
Hello, this is Jenny Luscombe, and this is Feeling is Healing. And I think we're up to episode 17. And what we're going to do today is quite difficult. I've decided with these shows, because of the nature of it all and because of what we're all going through, I think I'm going to alternate week by week. So going dark one week and then going light the next week. Because last week was brilliant, where we focused on bringing in positive emotion. And I think right now we need to do more of that. So this week I'm actually going dark, and there is a trigger warning on this one, because this is all about the family scapegoat pattern. And some people wouldn't have called it that. Some people would refer to that, more commonly known as the black sheep of the family. So what I'm going to do today is recommend that you tap, if you're going to be listening to this on the replay, so tap on your thymus point on the center of your chest, or alternatively you can kind of rest your hands in your lap and you can tap gently on the side of your hand, which is the squishy part of your hand on the side underneath your little finger. And then that keeps your cortisol level really low. Sometimes it comes down by about 50%, which is a lot, especially if you're going through a lot right now. And that actually enables you to think more clearly, and it helps you to join dots. It helps you to gain understanding. It helps you to surface subconscious information. And emotion is information. Emotion is what our body is kind of calling to us with. So it's a tool. So what I want you to do today, we're going to do parts work. So we're going to be looking at your internal scapegoater and your internal scapegoat. Because if this pattern has happened to you, it would have been happening all your life. And you would have faced so much difficulty with this pattern, probably knowingly, maybe unknowingly, that it's likely that you have internalized a part of your consciousness because you've been unable to process that. And it's likely that most people listening to this, it's likely that if you're on the spiritual path and you're drawn to all things holistic, it's very likely that you were the one in the family that was the black sheep or the scapegoat. So we've internalized the scapegoat or the black sheep, and we've internalized the scapegoater. So I'm going to start on the side of your consciousness that is the scapegoater. So if you've been scapegoated all your life, you will be subconsciously scapegoating yourself. And it might be hard to see at first, and that's okay. So I'm going to talk a bit about how this pattern came about, where it comes from, why it's happening. So I would say tap all the way through, because it is a lot. And at this time in history, with the frequency of the earth and everything that's going on, the system's collapsing. This is a biggie. This is basically what we're all doing. So it's our job as spiritual beings in a human body to rise out of this pattern. And before we start, I'm going to give you the antidote right at the beginning. It's not actually very easy to get to because it involves excavating your consciousness and unearthing it all and looking at what really happened to you and seeing it in all of its brutality and horror. So the antidote to this is to accept that they disapprove of you. Now, most of us have spent all of our lives trying not to be disapproved of. And as we're seeing in our own families and in maybe work situations, we're seeing that it doesn't work. Now, we don't have to accept that we are the bad guy. We've probably suppressed that they think we're the bad guy. And that's why we have an internal scapegoater. So where this comes from is basically unconscious parenting is where it originates. So we start off in our families and we may have parents that are quite authoritarian. If we don't do as we're told, we might be punished. Now, in the generations that we were raised in, that was kind of quite normal. You know, like as my own mother has told me, everybody hit their kids in the 70s. All of this brutality has been normalized, which makes it even more difficult for us to see. That's the problem. So when this starts, it seems like we are being targeted without reason, like we just cannot understand. We're asked to fit in. We're asked to shut ourselves down entirely. So many aspects of us that we wanted to be, that we wanted to express, we had to hide. And we end up in a situation where we have no choice but to go along with them, even if they're making us the bad guy. So we're given a kind of script. This is what you do. This is how you live. This is what you say. This is how to behave. And if you don't do that, you'll get punished and you'll get excluded and you'll be abandoned and we won't love you. So that's what's happening. Now, it's a kind of we're right, you're wrong scenario. You have to comply, whatever your story. And it is very sinister and dark. And most people don't want to see it. And it's a terrifying sense of ownership, of being hijacked. And our families just were above question. And there was no room for negotiation. There was no actual desire for resolution. So sometimes the unhealed trauma of our parents is what is causing this. So when we as children turn out to be an actual person with needs and wants and desires and thoughts, and we're there and we want to express, it can bring up in our unconscious unhealed parent the sense of, but I want to do what I want to do, instead of facing the fact that that's not the child's problem. That's a problem that, you know, came from a long time ago. The child is made the issue. Now, what a lot of people don't know about this pattern is that the strongest member of the family is the one that is targeted. Now, you've got to see this you've got to see the subconscious side of it. So if you had an unconscious parent, they have suppressed wounds that they cannot look at. They don't have the education, they don't have the understanding, they don't have conscious awareness that they're doing this. They don't really see the fact that you're not actually necessarily the bad guy. It was never their motivation to not make you the bad guy and to not scapegoat you. It's just that they had unhealed wounds that they couldn't resolve, and they needed to throw all their shit at somebody. And the strongest member of the family is going to be the one that is selected subconsciously to do that. So if you're the black sheep or the scapegoat, you were carrying everything that was wrong in their world. Your siblings, your parent that's doing that, maybe your other parent that's going along with that. You're carrying their pain, and it doesn't feel good. Now, what this does to the child that was you, it brings you into an extreme confusion, because you're kind of stuck there asking yourself, you know, just what is it that I did so wrong to deserve this treatment? Now, there's levels to this. What happens to us if we carry this pattern all our lives and it's not resolved? And mainly people don't resolve this because they don't know how, and we're not there yet. But it does lead, and I know this myself because I'm the scapegoat, and this is what I've been doing. It leads to a fix. I need to fix everybody. I need to fix myself. I need to save everybody. It brings you into a situation where you're never able to get love from others in the way that you need it. And then when you internalize this scapegoater, you start to do that to yourself. So you can't actually get the love you need from yourself either. And you might be asking, why? You know, why? Why is that? So that's because resolving things was never the intention of the family group in the first place. It was never a motivation of anyone in the family for you to not be the problem. It served them so that they could avoid looking at themselves. So here we are, sort of in adulthood, spending our lives paying for sins that we never committed. And then the very unfortunate thing that happens on top of that pain is that the law of attraction brings you again and again and again the same pattern in every relationship that you have. So on some level, this is going to be happening with your partner, with your friends, with your parents, with your kids, at work. You will attract situations where you get blamed. So this is a strong blame-shame pattern. And what happens to you when you're scapegoated as a child, and then this continues into your adult life, is that you start to have a frequency that acts like a kind of super glue to attract this problem perpetually. So it keeps you getting into this same situation. Now, what we had to do when we were the black sheep, when we were scapegoated, to stay safe, to be fed, to be clothed, to not be alone, we on some level had to accept the role, because it was the only way to stay safe in the social group. So that becomes your way of fitting in socially and staying safe with people generally. So we had to accept responsibility. we didn't have any choice. Now we do have a choice now, and this is what the universe is requiring us to do. It's requiring us to see the intensity of this pattern, which is the worst one. This is the worst. So keep tapping. So accepting responsibility for, all the pain in the family, it actually makes you not like the people that are hurting you. So it puts you against your family. It also makes you very drawn and attracted to people who are capable of taking responsibility. That makes you feel really safe. And you don't want to let that go. But you can also end up in situations where you only feel like you're in control if you're 100% responsible. So because no one in the social group took responsibility, we were forced to do it for all of them. And it might be hard to see at first, but just sit with that. And then this, because we were forced to do this when we were kids, it becomes a habit. And we all know how difficult habits are to break. But you have to see it to break it. So we either had to accept the role of the scapegoat or face the wrath of being excluded, facing being continually made to be the problem, facing the social consequences and the problems, which are, that's a lot of, being the scapegoat. So by conforming to this and accepting the scapegoat pattern out of confusion, because we thought we had to, and there wasn't any other choice, this caused the loss of ourselves and caused that sense of being an outcast, being weird, being not like everybody else. So as a relational species, we prioritize closeness and connection with our social group above everything else. So aloneness is like an annihilation. So when you can't or don't or won't conform, when this first starts, this specific pattern happens. So you have to buy into the family problem and adopt this as the way that you see yourself. Now, the problem with that is that it isn't you. It's been imposed upon you. So this is identity level stuff. So when you accept this pattern as a child and you're no longer resisting the way that they wanted to use you, with that non-resistance that occurs, oh, okay, yeah, Jen's going to be the one that takes the blame. When that non-resistance kicks in, then the others can avoid their unresolved issues even further by this next level. So this is like, you might have heard of problem, reaction, solution. Now, this is happening very much in our systems and in our world and in our governments. They create the horrible stuff, the horrible problem, and then they create a solution. And we all know what that's like. It all comes from this same pattern. So in order to continue to avoid their unresolved issues even further, they take on the role then of being the healer and the fixer of you. So when you're getting the blame, and you're kicking off and you don't like it, and you're like, why do you always blame me? I didn't even do anything. It wasn't even anything to do with me. They then become your healer or fixer. So the scapegoat then becomes the patient. So the scapegoaters start to see themselves as a really good person because they're there for you. Now, because they're unconscious and they've got all these different parts that can't communicate with each other, they're not really seeing that they set you up. So I've heard people describe this in really, with really good words, to help you see what this is actually doing, because this is the most dysfunction that you can have in a family. So they're making out that you have some sort of personality defect, that you're wrong and bad fundamentally, and that you're the one that's causing everybody else's pain. It's actually an extreme form of gaslighting. So I can't remember who said this, but I read somewhere, somebody said it's like stabbing someone and then being angry that they bleed. And another one, it's like breaking someone's legs with a sledgehammer and then telling them to get up off the floor for making a scene. Now, it really is a difficult one, because if you've been doing this all your life and they've been doing this all their lives, it's very difficult to separate yourself from them and that. So many people who do recognize this pattern have chosen that the abandonment and the kind of outcast thing that happens, you know, if you don't do what we say, then we're going to abandon you and you're going to be alone. We've seen that actually we'll take the abandonment, thanks, because being alone is actually the only way out. So if you reject the role of the scapegoat, then you are alone. And many of us on the spiritual path, we are. And if we can learn to accept that they disapprove of us, we don't have to accept that they've got good reason to. We don't have to accept that it's okay. But if we can accept that they just do disapprove of us and that they can't look at themselves, there's an incapacity, and we've sort of covered that before, then that's all we've got, actually. And it takes a long time to get to that place. But something that you might recognize in your own lives is that if this has been going on for you, your only frame of reference for closeness and connection is the feeling of someone fixing you. So in my life, this has played out spectacularly. So I have had lots and lots of relationships. I was in a very, very long-term relationship for 24 years. And then after that relationship broke down, a couple of years later, I decided to date. And I thought, you know, for somebody that does all this healing, why am I attracting so many total assholes? And it's because it's the screw you up, fix you up pattern. So some people who have kind of gone in a different direction to us, like we're the codependent, and if you're the codependent, it's likely that you'll just naturally attract somebody narcissistic. They will be trapped in this pattern just as much as you are trapped in this pattern in the opposite polarity. So they mess you up so they can fix you up, because this is the subconscious mind trying to get you to see what's happening. Problem, reaction, solution. So even though they energetically punched you onto the floor or took a sledgehammer to your legs or stabbed you with a knife, you know, even though they've done that to you, the feeling of them fixing you up and the makeup, you know, the having the argument and then kind of seeming to resolve it, it feels so good. But it only feels good because you're not getting hurt like before. So if that rings any bells for anyone, this is where it comes from. So what happens to us if we're scapegoated is that your only frame of reference for love and safety can become blaming yourself. So this is where we internalize the scapegoater. You start to see yourself as the problem, and you're like, well, maybe it is me, and you doubt yourself. And we just go through this on repeat and on repeat and on repeat. And we make them the bad guy, like they've made us the bad guy. And then we make ourselves the bad guy. And it's a lose, lose. And as you all know, I'm interested in win-wins, which are always available. Although when we were kids, we didn't have access to that because we didn't believe that was possible because nobody else did. So what this can also do within your system, it can cause an obsession with being good. Because if you're constantly scapegoated and made the black sheep and made the bad guy, you're just in fix-it mode constantly, and you cannot accept that you're the bad guy because you know deep down that you're not, and you know that something's off. And when you're kids, like, you don't realize that you're the seer of the family. You can actually see the dysfunction, but you just don't have any words for it. And actually, they can see that you can see. It's so twisted. So because you've been made the bad guy for such a long time, you might have developed an obsession with being good. And obviously we choose to be, the opposite of them to restore a sense of our own goodness. So our only way of being good is to seek out how we're at fault and to take the blame. So it's really twisted. And it's really hard to understand. You might have to listen to this and then listen to this again. So we get to the point where, because we can't resolve this, we feel like our only way of being good is to seek out how we're at fault. So anytime that there's conflict, we might just observe ourselves jumping in and saying, how can I take that pain off you? How can I tell you that it was all me so we can get back to the peace? So we take the blame and we blame ourselves. And then when we do this, we attract more and more blame from others. And this can happen over and over again in 1,000,000,001 relationships. It's not fun. So when we kind of have this knee-jerk reaction, right, I'm going to just take 100% of the responsibility, we become control freaks. It causes us to not then be the victim. So we see that our families defaulted to us. It became habit for them to blame us because we were more able to take it than anyone else. We became the automatic blame taker. So just think really hard in your life about what you take responsibility for. Now, an unfortunate thing that happens in relationships here, which I've found out, is that if you have this unhealed wound, you basically become a magnet to anyone who doesn't want to take any responsibility at all. The really difficult one here is that if you sort of have a face-off and kind of like stand up to your family and try to say to them, you're scapegoating me, this isn't fair, I haven't actually done anything. What is it that you want? What is the resolution? Like, you'll realize that they don't want resolution, because resolution would involve them having to see themselves. They would have to see what they were doing to you, which they can't, otherwise they wouldn't be doing it. The difficulty is that we can become the enabler of them if we don't call them out. But if we do call them out, we can get locked into just conflict with no resolution, because there actually isn't a resolution here. The only resolution is to do loads of energy work on yourself, loads of healing, and to land in accepting that they will disapprove of you, possibly forever, and there's nothing you can do about it. You just have to kind of like be your truth and live your life as you without them sometimes. So I would recommend in relationships, always look really closely at what is and isn't yours. And look really closely at what's going on when you feel like something is your fault, or when you feel like something isn't your fault. And obviously, we don't want to become like our family who hurt us, but we do subconsciously think that we're the good guy for taking the blame, but we don't have to take the blame. And actually, it's our job not to at this time in history. It's our job to not take the blame, to let them to continue to disapprove of us. We don't have to engage with the blame, but we can free ourselves by accepting that they just are doing that. Not easy. So the consequences of annihilation and abandonment that we try to avoid as kids, it's actually so much better than a lifetime of scapegoating, being smeared by others, and then all the ensuing kind of social consequences of being made the wrong one. It isn't safe, and it isn't love. It isn't real love. And it's actually very parasitic. It's a very parasitic pattern. It's very dark. So the thing that can alert us to this, if we're kind of not fully aware of it, is if we're constantly blaming ourselves, even when we couldn't possibly be to blame. This is the pattern to try and get out of. So this is where our focus needs to be if we want to heal this. So we might realize actually we're blaming ourselves so that we're not like those people that hurt us. And we decide I'm not going to ever be like them. And actually, we've been practicing courage all our lives, coping with this. And people on the spiritual path are usually more than willing to see what they've done wrong. We're often the ones who are going to say, yeah, you called me out. I am doing that thing. You know, maybe I should have known better, but thank you for telling me. And I'm going to try better not to do that thing. Like, we are really good at owning our stuff. So scapegoaters are not being authentic. There's a cloud of illusion there. They're not coping with life. They're using you as the coping mechanism. They're not owning their thoughts, their needs, their emotions. It's incredibly, incredibly difficult. So we've looked quite a lot at the scapegoater. So what we're going to do now is switch. So we've been looking at what's been done to us and what we're subconsciously doing to ourselves because that was done to us. So sit with that. Ask yourself, how was I scapegoated? How was I made the black sheep? And how am I doing that to myself? How am I blaming myself? how am I shaming myself? So we know from other shows that shame is basically pushing yourself away. So remember to keep tapping, because this is really, really difficult, especially if you've not seen this happening in your family. So now we're going to switch to the internal scapegoat. So this is the victim of the abuse. So this is the one, this part of your consciousness. This is the you. This is the you who takes on all the others' unhealed stuff. So in the situations that we're all in, you know, we're the truthers, we're the spiritual ones, we're the witches and the wizards. And if we are if we are the scapegoat, you know, if we have received that treatment, then we can push that aspect of us away. We can push away our purposes, you know, what we're here to do. That's why we're in so much resistance to who we are a lot of the time, because we were made not okay. So just to see that, it's really hard for us at the moment to step into our truth, to speak our truth, to perceive what we perceive in the world, and still keep talking about it, even when people are blocking us out, shutting us down, blocking us quite literally. So we sometimes don't accept this part of ourselves because we were not accepted. So just notice if you're pushing that aspect of yourself away so as to kind of gain closeness with yourself and safety. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with the term triangulation. So this is something that happens in abuse situations where somebody will abuse you and then they will get all their friends to also do the same. So, you know, like when they're like, somebody garners support to take you down. So we can actually start to triangulate our own awake aspect of consciousness because we've been scapegoated so much. And we can cause immense pain for ourselves doing this. And this is where self-hatred comes from. So we can actually direct self-hatred towards our truest, most beautiful aspect because other people did it. And there's all this suppression and denial and rejection and disowning of who we really are. And when we have this pattern, we are likely to do that to ourselves. So I've talked about before what the definition of love is. So the definition of love that makes sense to me is when we can take another person as a part of ourselves. So when we take another person as a part of ourselves, we can't hurt that person without hurting ourselves. So their best interests are our best interests. We want to meet their needs. We want them to be happy. This is how the world would work if love existed more in our lives than it does now. So when this is happening internally, if we've been scapegoated, if we've been made the black sheep, we can be taking parts of ourself as ourself very difficult. So there are parts of us that we can't love because nobody else loves them. And it's like we cannot allow these parts of us to exist. And that makes sense if you sort of take yourself all the way back to childhood. How many parts of you couldn't exist because you had to do as you were told? So it makes sense that we would push parts of ourselves away. So this is shame. And self-hatred. But we're just trying to heal ourselves. Like, we're not doing anything wrong by doing this. And we don't actually really hate ourselves. There's no parts of us that hate us. Those parts are trying to protect us. And it doesn't always seem obvious at first. So it might feel like there's parts of us that we just don't love. We can't take these parts as part of ourselves. That's what fragmentation is. We've split ourselves in half, and we've chopped ourselves up and divided us up into chunks. And we can only be a certain way when we're in certain situations. Now, it just isn't authentic, but we're all on the road to authenticity, and that's good enough. So a good question to ask yourself is, what would it take to fully integrate my scapegoated self? So the part of me that maybe it's your awake truther spirit. So what would it take to fully integrate all my selves, especially the ones that were scapegoated, into my fullness and wholeness? Now, sometimes, and this might ring a bell for a few people, sometimes we stop ourselves actually from being successful. We decide that we need to stay unsuccessful. We need to dumb ourselves down. We need to not be too good because it hurts others. So whenever we were kind of getting on our high horse, or we were in our kind of divine spirit when we were kids and we were shut down for it, obviously that's going to feel difficult for us to be that authentic truth. But what we need to see is we shut down the beautiful aspects of ourselves because it makes them feel bad, not because there's anything wrong with us. Now, this is the most cruel pattern in existence. So you might sort of see in your life that you're disapproved of if you get too clever. You're disapproved of if you impress too many people, or if you enjoy yourself too much, or if you shine too brightly. You might subconsciously believe that it's actually unacceptable for your rare beauty and wisdom and purity and intelligence. It's actually unacceptable to be like that. And it sounds insane to say it out loud. But if you felt like, people have been jealous of your seeing, your wisdom, your perspective, your life, whatever it is, if people have been jealous and hateful towards you, then often like you would have been incredibly shocked by their cruelty. We've realized that we're not like them. We are different. But we did learn, many people learned that success is just inappropriate. And obviously success can be defined in a million different ways. Imagine how that plays out if we have kind of downloaded that into our body in relationship. So success in relationship is inappropriate. If you have that program going on, you're never going to have a relationship that works. So what's actually happened here is that we've learned that we can't be ourselves and have them too. In order to have them, we have to not be ourselves. So in order to have them, we have to disconnect from ourselves. But if we choose ourselves, then we're choosing aloneness and abandonment and annihilation. So all we've got, and we have to keep coming back to it, all we've got is choosing to be disapproved of. So we might actually have to say yes to being disapproved of. Now, that might sound bonkers, but it can really help to shift you out of the vibration of trying not to be disapproved of, trying not to your whole life. So this is what I've been saying about emotion. You know, all our lives we've been trying not to feel things, trying not to be anxious, trying not to be depressed, trying not to be unworthy, you know, instead of just letting ourselves be in the emotional experience so that it can transmute into something else. So this is so difficult. Oh my God. If we actually come out of trying not to be disapproved of by our family, which might be causing us to fight, which never goes anywhere, it's a lose-lose. And we've done it to death. I mean, let's face it. If we can say yes to being disapproved of and then just feel into that radical action and choice will change everything. Because just because you're saying yes to being disapproved of doesn't mean that they've got every right to disapprove of you. If you say yes to their disapproval, they've got nowhere to go. It cannot continue because you're not going to fight anymore. You're over it. Well, you're probably not over it. Like, you don't have to feel good about this. It's not going to feel good to say yes to being disapproved of, but it's going to feel better to take control in that way and to honor yourself and to not accept the blame, but to accept and just say yes to the disapproval that's happening because they've got, you know, their own path. And if they're choosing to disapprove of you, there's not really anything that you can do. So if you say, yes, you disapprove of me, okay, let's move on. Then you've made an incredibly intense, impossible situation, very volatile. You've changed the situation entirely upon its head. And obviously, sort of, if you zoom out and you look at what's going on in the world now, you know, we've all been disapproved of because we can see what governments are doing. We can see how people have been hoodwinked. We can see what they're trying to do. We can see what's going on. Now, we know it's coming out. We know that everyone's going to see. They're not going to like it. And do you know what? They'll probably blame us. They'll probably say, why didn't you tell us? Even though obviously we did. If you can let go of needing their approval, you are winning. And it's quite possibly one of the most difficult things that you will ever do in your life, especially if it's with you or your parents or your partner. Now, I'm going to push the boat out and say it's temporary. And it feels very permanent to all of us at the moment that are in this pattern because we haven't really known what to do with it. And, you know, we think we should stand up for ourselves, and sometimes that works. Sometimes that's what we need to stand up for ourselves instead of being abused. Deciding that you're going to let go of needing their approval will change. It will. And it will bring you a level of peace. Because needing approval from somebody, it's probably not the whole of your being that they disapprove of. It's probably just aspects of you, like your truth awake aspect. It's going to transmute if you let go of needing their approval, because you won't need to fight. The conflict will come right down. So you don't have to do it. You don't have to take my advice, but I would recommend feeling into it Feel into what would that be like if I said yes to being disapproved of. If I let go of my need for their approval. Now, there's a kind of blindness with this, and we cannot see what we cannot see. And all of this kind of work does help us find out things that we didn't know. So feel it out, go into that possibility and wonder what would happen. And I really like wonder. Wonder and curiosity are my favorite frequencies because when you're wondering and you're curious, you're leaning in and you're opening up to basically endless cosmic laws in the universe opening literally all over the place when you say yes to being disappointed. Because it might be the first time in your life that you've actually honored yourself. If you can radically self-love in this way, wow. Because as soon as you do something that you wouldn't normally do, that's when you get change. Now, this scapegoat pattern is particularly nasty. Particularly. There isn't, I don't think there's any way out of the scapegoat pattern than letting go of the need for approval. So I'm looking forward to hearing from any of you that even start to entertain this as a possibility. It doesn't actually necessarily mean that you're going to lose anyone. And in fact, it could actually have the opposite effect. And obviously, every situation is very unique and different. But there's another thing that happens with the scapegoat. So just ask yourself, do I have a pattern of trying not to get found out? Because if you've constantly been on the receiving end of blame, blamed for everyone else's problems, not just your own, then you might be constantly kind of subconsciously on a high alert, trying not to get found out. So this is kind of like a sense of guilt. I'm doing something wrong, or I am someone wrong, which would be a sense of shame. If you're constantly trying not to get found out, it's going to be very hard for you to be visible in the world as you. So sometimes also we hide ourselves. We hide ourselves from ourselves and also from everybody else. And it's particularly difficult if from your wounding, it means that actually you crave attention and you crave approval and you need to be seen and you need to be known and felt and heard and sensed and listened to and acknowledged and honored. It's a need. We can't heal ourselves out of a need. And there's nothing wrong with any of that. What I'm suggesting to you is if you can love yourself radically enough to let go of the approval from those people, then you will find your people. And then when you find your people, your own family, because you will be happier, you will be different. They will see a different side of you. It will probably start to surface the pattern that they've been doing. And you might actually find that they begin the journey of seeing themselves. Because when you change your frequency, they change theirs, and that's the law, and that's how it works. It doesn't all happen at once. Sometimes it can actually. Yeah, so sorry, I'm pausing quite a lot today because I've written so many notes on this. It's like I didn't know that I had so much information in my head about this. Yeah, so fortunately for us, finding this unbearable need to be seen and heard and felt and sensed, to be able to explain and for people to hear us and to get our point of view. They just can't. And we have to come back to that capacity, that incapacity. They just can't. So it would be the definition of insanity if we continue to do the same thing over and over again, try to get them to hear us. They're just not going to, because it would involve them looking at themselves, which they're not going to do. Not yet. You're the one that does that. You can ask people to do that, but they don't have to do that. It is the most frustrating thing on the planet. So yeah, you know, it's taken us all our lives, but like we have to be ready to not play their way anymore. We have to be ready to step out and to protect ourselves and to let go and to disconnect from that need for approval, to be free from needing it. Because as soon as we do that, we're going to be more visible in the world and we're going to be seen and accepted and heard and sensed by the right people, by the ones. And, you know, what we're all trying to do is find out who we really are. We can't find out who we really are seeking approval from people who approve of us. We can only find out who we really are if we're among people who can appreciate us and just be with us, not against us, with us. So it's a lot of food for thought. It really is. It's so deep. It's so big. I mean, I've been working on this pattern all my life and layers. Oh my God, layers and layers and layers. So I'm going to leave that with you, and I hope you're all okay after listening to that because it is brutal. It's brutal stuff. All we've got is to own our own truth and to try not to blame ourselves. If we are blaming ourselves, we need to look at that pattern. We need to sit with that pattern, do some tapping, and own our truth, not have it dictated to us, because that's what happened. And this is what we're here to do, everyone. We're here to own ourselves and our own truths for them, you know, even though like doing anything for them at this point feels like, you know, the opposite of what we want to do. Anyway, I'm going to finish there. Oh, it's bang on 7 o'clock. So, thank you, everybody that's here. Anyone like to say anything or jump in?
Just jump in, Jenny, and just say thank you. My thoughts, listening to what you said, one place to another. Yeah, quite an incredible session, really. One thing that I will mention, and I don't want this to sound like I'm trying to make it sound cheesy or anything. Far from it. But you know, there's a song that popped into my head in the last 5 or 10 minutes. Was what you were saying that you triggered. Was the theme tune from Cheers.
Oh, okay.
And specifically the line that says, "And everybody knows your name."
Yeah. Yeah. Oh.
And for some strange reason, I just, where everybody knows your name.
Yeah. I love that, Andy, because like I see that as channeling. Like you sometimes hear people that are channeling, they get the lyrics to a song or they get a tune and then they start singing the tune and then they realise that it's the exact message that they were looking for. So yeah, I'm gonna go and find that. I'm gonna go and find it. Thank you.
I'll find it on YouTube and post it on the group.
Yeah. Yeah, that's brilliant.
Thank you very much, Jenny. I don't know if anybody else wants to unmute and say a few words, but thank you. And when you're ready, let me know and I'll stop the recording.
All right, thanks, Andy. So I can see Louise and Jackie. Hello.
Hi.
Hi. You don't have to.
You don't join you halfway through, so I'll have to listen to it, the recording.
Yeah, that's all right, Louise. You don't have to be punctual on Holistic Radio. It's all set up for.
I don't even know what day of the week it is at the minute.
Do you know anyone that does? Do you know it? I don't know anyone who knows what day it is.
Oh, good.
Everything's gone weird, hasn't it? Like it feels really strange now. The energy, like weird. Yeah, I don't know. There's not really many words for it at this point. But thanks for coming, Louise. I always appreciate your presence.
You're welcome. I will listen to it later.
Yeah.
And because I think it's probably, I was from what I did here, it was definitely what resonates with me as well.
Yeah, it helps to think about your own relationships and your past, and but to know where it came from, like it really helped me when I realized and found out that actually it's the strongest member of the family that is targeted by this pattern. Yeah, it makes sense, doesn't it? Because we can sort of, it really helps with the unworthiness, because like a lot of us have felt this kind of sense of I'm useless or I'm unworthy or I never get it right, or like there's a million and one different sort of limiting beliefs that come from being the scapegoat. And if you can suddenly see strength in that, it's like, oh, thank God. Hi, Jackie.
Hi. I just wanted to say I was nodding my head. It was resonating with me. I was just in agreement the whole way through. Okay. It seems like you're resonating with me. Every time I tune into you live, it's like I should be listening.
Yeah, it's funny because a lot of people say that about me. I think I'm a bit of a reflector. Like I'm like a mirror, which is not always fun because I sometimes reflect people's subconscious as well.
Has to be done.
Yeah, someone's got to do it.
Exactly.
But yeah, it felt very poignant to sort of cover that right now as well. Like every week, I'm not kind of like sitting around racking my brains going, "Oh, what should I do on the radio?" It just presents itself to me, through my own relationships, but also through what clients come with, and it's brilliant because I know that when I do that, when I plan the show around kind of what I'm experiencing, there's a collective thing going on as well, which is going to sort of apply to.
I think it's like I think we're all sort of like tuning into each other.
Yeah.
And that's how come I find that 9 times out of 10 your shows are just so in tune with whatever I happen to have gone through or I'm thinking about or I should look at, I'm like, okay, this is
yeah. I think it's really sort of the further you go on the path, the more you realize that everything around you is leading you somewhere. Like everything, I get messages from my cat sometimes. And she's a Zen master. But
I should have kept my mic on because I was laughing. I'm sure the others were laughing as well. Brilliant.
And I'm looking at her now. She's really frustrated because But anyway, it's all food for thought, and I kind of didn't. Part of me, part of my consciousness didn't want to do the show on this today because I wanted to sort of just have a laugh and like have some fun, and but I'll do something light next week and see how we all are then. But we'll do sort of like positive visualizing and stuff next week because we might all need it by then. And like at the moment, we don't know what's going to happen. But anyway, thank you everybody so much. And it's brilliant when you guys come live. Thank you. I feel appreciated. But yeah. And Andy, you can finish it. Is Andy still there? Sorry, I can't see anything because of my eyes. I've got the wrong...
I stopped you just there on your eyes.
Oh, did you? Yeah, because I wear contact lenses and they're long distance contact lenses, but often I'm wearing glasses, but then I'll be wearing the wrong glasses. Like I can't seem to get it right when I'm on the show. So I'm trying to look at the phone and I can't really see it.
Right, no, I've stopped recording now.
Thanks,
I'll post
Andy.
that up shortly and then forward it on to you as well. Thank you very much, Jackie and Louise, for commenting and opening up. Absolutely brilliant, amazing.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. Thanks, Louise. Yay! Good. I'm gonna. Yeah, that's a good idea. All right. Well, we'll all put it on there and we'll sing and pretend that we're together. How's that? Oh, you'll probably recognise it. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
You know, it's quite subdued. It's quite a bit sort of low, but it's quite light.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. And I used to like that. Mm.
That was kind of like an escape for me.
Yeah, it was a good show. It was a good show and a good tune. So yeah, thanks for that, Andy.
Wasn't
oh, Fraser, yeah. Yeah, not quite the same. Not the same.